and W. Now, been a little while since we've had Alan McCallum on. He joins us now live via satellite to opine and to talk about the quarter pole of the Orioles. Alan, we're at the quarter pole, and there's a real season, and they haven't been particularly good, but they win a lot of games. There's a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes you can sort of shoot in a lot of this, including where Manny Machado is and, where Gausman is right now, and certainly Jimenez and Wade Miley. But all things considered, dude, 25-16 at the quarter pole, I'll take it all day long, man.
Yeah, look, I mean, the last time we spoke, I think we said basically if you could go through a month of the season basically with Tillman out and Britton on the shelf and Gausman being pretty awful and the like, and the middle of the lineup not hitting to be as positive as they were, you couldn't argue with it. And the month of May has been a mixed bag. It started off great and then has struggled here mightily. And there's certainly the things that we didn't talk about a month ago because they were playing well in spite of them, as you said, are certainly worth talking about now because they are concerns and they are things that are going to need to be addressed or to improve as they go forward. The middle of the lineup has been. I mean, Davis had a good run for about 5 games. Trumbo's showing some life, but as you said, Manny. If I see Manny back leg another pop up or swing through a ball again, I mean that's been the entire season and. I've said to you on a few occasions, I'm convinced that if Manny Machado came up in the Boston Red Sox organization, he'd be a great hitter and arguably the best player in the game. With guys like Pedroia and their whole offensive philosophy. And instead of being in Baltimore, he's watching Adam Jones and Chris Davis and Mark Trumbo and Mark Reynolds before them and, swing hard for the fences no matter what the count is. Don't work counts. Those kinds of things, and you show up. Those things show up when that's all you see everyone on a daily basis. So that's certainly an issue for Manny. Britton being out, I know I've heard a lot of people talking about, Britton's the linchpin of the bullpen, and maybe that's true. But certainly right now, the biggest thing for the pitching staff is that the starters aren't going deep into games. That's basically been the story of the Orioles for years now, but. This bullpen's going to get run through pretty quickly if they can't get Tillman and Gausman and, Ubaldo or Miley from time to time end it to the 6th or 7th inning. The bullpen's just not strong enough to do that right now. And as much as the shuttle up and down from the minor leagues for the long relievers has been useful, it has been. About half of them have been pretty good. Asher, who looks like he's going to be here for a little while, and Verrett. But other guys like Kino and I would have said Blyer, although he seems to be stuck here right now with Donnie Hart being sent down. Some of those guys have shown some weaknesses, and that's affected the bullpen. So there's certainly some pieces going on here that they need to get figured out. A couple of uncharacteristic defensive missteps. Which certainly is not a modus operandi for this ball club. There certainly have been a few things that have added into what's been a mixed bag in May for the Orioles.
Well, Wade Miley's been a mixed bag, and certainly I don't know that we've talked about a veteran pitcher like this who always sort of struggles, always sort of pitching out of jams, and found a jam early Sunday and, managed to go 107 pitches in 7 innings deep, which is, that'll be his best start, right? I mean, you can't expect for much more. They wind up losing the game. But in the case of Wade Miley, he's been a real strange case of a guy with a sub-3 ERA that I think with every pitch you get nervous with him, and there's usually runners on bases as well.
It feels like a left-handed version of Rick Sutcliffe when he got here with better stuff, right? I mean, a guy who's always battling the count, battling himself, pitching around guys because he's got someone on base and he's trying to find the guy he can get out. Wade Miley, when he came up a few years ago, was a great young talent, and it had run into some really hard times, clearly battling himself. He's gotten him traded a few times here, and he's having more success in Baltimore than he's had in at least the last 3 or 4 seasons. But, it's certainly, you don't expect him to go out and throw 6 clean innings. That's just not who he is. You're right now. I guess the Nats would probably say he's our version of Gio Gonzalez, but he's going to walk some guys. He's going to throw some pitches to get out of jams, and sometimes he's not going to get out of the jam. You can clearly see the talent. You can clearly see that he's got the stuff, particularly for a lefty, to make it in the major leagues. And now he just has to. He and Gausman have the same problem, right? Command of the fastball in particular, but really need to just find ways to get guys to chase the pitches they want chased. And if not, they need to get into the count early, 0-1, 0-2, and neither one of them seem to be able to do that right now. But Miley's saving grace is that he's left-handed, and that he has his stuff is good enough to sort of find the right guy to get out. It's let me put it this way: unlike Ubaldo on occasion, and unlike Gausman in a lot of his starts this year, there haven't been a lot of times in his starts where he's gotten the team out of the game early. It's always walk 3, give up 1, walk 2, get out of the inning with a double play. So he usually leaves the game, and his ERA is you can attribute this to the ERA that he's coming out 5, maybe 6 innings with 1 or 2 runs given up, but he's walked somewhere between 5, 2 and 7, I guess. I've seen worse for the Orioles. Let me put it this way, that way. He's not going to be in the Cy Young running given the way he's pitching right now, but I've certainly seen worse.
Well, I mean, he's no Jeff Ballard on the soft toss left side. But Alan McCallum joining us here talking a little Orioles baseball. He is our resident Oriole historian around here. And, of course, you're familiar with his voice here for the last 2 decades. Jimenez aside, what is the next answer? Like, who's the next guy here? And it looks like Asher is going to roll into the bullpen. I mean, we've gone through the Wrights. We've gone through the Wilsons. It looks like we might see more of that. But who will be in the rotation in August, in your opinion, Alan? And I will say this much. I think they will be in the race in August as a team.
Well, I think they're going to be in the race in August for a couple of reasons. One, because the Red Sox really miss David Ortiz. They're 2 Davids. They really miss David Price. They really miss David Ortiz. And as good as they are offensively, there's without the sort of the linchpin in David Ortiz, they can score runs, they can put up runs, but they're not terrifying. You know what I mean? And I think between that and the issues, Rick Porcello won the Cy Young because he won 20 games, but he was not the best pitcher in the American League last year. And they scored a ton of runs for him, and they're not doing that this year. So, he's come back to earth, and their one truly dangerous pitcher is Chris Sale. It was a good pickup for them, no question about that. But historically, his numbers say that he's not as good in the second half as he's in the first. So we'll see where we are. The Blue Jays got off to a horrible start. They're finding their balance right now, but they're not running away with anything by any stretch of the imagination. They're trying to get to 500. The Rays are certainly competitive, but not terrifying. And as good as the Yankees are, and they have been good, there's just no way to argue that they haven't. If you look at the numbers for their starters, particularly Tanaka and Sabathia, they've certainly taken some dents here in the last few weeks. And I find it hard to believe that the young players they have really anchoring that lineup right now and the way they're doing it. And I give Girardi credit. I'm not a fan of his personally, but he's certainly a good manager. I think that at some point they're going to come back to earth. We'll see whether that happens or not. But so the competition is less than running away with it, and the Orioles are good and should be good enough, barring massive injury, to stay in it. But I certainly think Bundy will be in the rotation. I would be surprised if Ubaldo is in the rotation at that point. I actually think that he'd be better off in the bullpen right now. It wouldn't surprise me.
But then who goes into the rotation? Asher?
I wouldn't surprise me if Asher did. Frankly, Asher, his first start, he looked great, and I don't understand why he never got another start. I still don't completely understand that. But I think Gausman, I think Bundy, I think Miley will be in the rotation. He's their only lefty, so they're gonna have to run with it. And quite frankly, again, I mean, his outings have been enough to give you stress. But
yeah, you need
he's,
an antacid, but he's gotten the job done, right?
he's gotten it done, right? I worry about Tillman's health. We talked about that before. So that would be the only reason that I would hesitate to say he's going to be in the
Well,
rotation.
my thing is it's going to be somebody.
Yeah.
It's not going to be Tillman, Bundy, Gosman, Jimenez, and Miley. It's not going to be what it was the first quarter of the way. I don't think this is sustainable, and certainly Gosman has stunk, and although he's made a little bit of a turn here, but I feel like we've seen the best of Miley. It'll go downhill from here. With Jimenez, it feels like there's no bottom. It feels like quicksand. And I don't know that Bundy can be that good. And I know he struggled last week, but I think on the whole, Bundy will look more like. I think the number we've seen out of the first quarter, I expect that out of Bundy the next 3 quarters more than what I've seen out of the rest of these guys.
Well, so there's a reality right here. I mean, the last few years, the Orioles' pitching has been pretty decent getting off to the start of the season, and then there's a turn, and the turn always happens when the weather gets hot and the humidity starts to play in and balls start to fly out of the ballpark, and there's usually a time for adjustment, and then they sort of figure it out, and that's basically where the Orioles are right now. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that Bundy's numbers are going to be, in the 2.5 range for the rest of the season. But I think Bundy is a real pitcher. And I think that bodes well for him. At this point, what you're worried about is, he's never thrown a lot of innings. So they're going to have to nurse him. And I know Buck said they've done some little things to keep him on point, but they're going to have to give him the extra day whenever they can. They're going to have to monitor his innings. And that's going to be a tough thing to do with him being the one guy that so far has been, for the most part, consistently going deeper into games to save the pen. So there needs to be some balance somewhere. Either Tillman's going to need to, regain his form of 6 or 7 innings per start, and Gosman, God knows they need to get more out of Gosman than what they've shown him so far. But yeah, it's a good question, Ness. I mean, they certainly have some young talent on the farm, but they don't seem to think any of them are ready. So I mean that's a trade, I guess. I mean, and how Duquette goes. He'll find the bargain out there and he'll make it work. And not someone like Miley. He can give up one guy that they really don't need and find a way to make it work. But it will probably be someone from outside the organization because they don't have another choice.
Machado, at what point do you get concerned about him a little bit, batting 2 1/4? I know he's hit some home runs, kicked the ball around a little bit on Sunday, but that being said, we expect him to look more like Brooks Robinson than Brooke Jacoby, I would say. But I don't know at what point the pressure gets to him. I mean, he's had both knees cut on. We saw Bryce Harper go through this last year. Guys do turn in full bad years, but I expect better out of him. I think the organization does as well, and I think as we get closer toward the witching hour, the tick-tock, he's got to perform better on his own merits, right?
Well, this team needs him to be, if not an MVP, they need him to be consistently in the star range. And I'll say again, I mean, the problem is very simple. He's up trying to hit a home run in virtually every at-bat, and that is problematic. And it's so incredibly frustrating. We've seen him for years show the ability to hit the ball the other way, to be a doubles guy. In 2013, when he hit, he was leading the league in doubles, and he was in the 20-25 home run range. I mean, that was exactly the player that this club needs. And it's so frustrating to know that ability is in him. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. And you knew the power would grow. But he, like so many of the guys on this club, they don't need to try and hit home runs to do it. So when you watch them do that, it's really frustrating. I mean, Manny look, there's been a lot of discussion about Manny and his contract. And I will be blunt. I wouldn't pay him that money. I wouldn't when the time comes and he's going to be looking for the one of the biggest contracts in this franchise's history by far, and one of the biggest contracts out there. I wouldn't give it to him because the maturity that you need to see in a player that's going to cost you that much, I just don't see. And at this point in his career, where he could again be the complete player, the complete hitter, and learning from the things that he's acquired over time. I see him reverting more and more into the swing from the heels type player that Chris Davis is, that Mark Trumbo is, and that Adam Jones, who has shown the ability in the last couple of years to try and change, which it impresses me about Adam. But he's just been around players that take an approach that he shouldn't be. And then there's another thing about Manny that I haven't heard much discussion about at all.
It's the first time you said this, by the way, Alan. So I'm gonna have to take a drink of water here.
When you're talking about making that kind of commitment, the player needs to be the anchor for the team, and Manny should be that. But
look, throwing the bats and fighting with guys and mouthing
right.
off and F you and all of that. I mean, I think the other teams now have realized they can get under his skin. They don't like him much. They can challenge him. And in a season when he has been challenged, he's hitting .225, right? I mean, that's just a fact.
There's another piece to this, particularly in Baltimore. Defensively, Manny Machado is a massive difference maker at third base. Manny wants to play shortstop. I think everybody knows that. And J.J. Hardy's contract is up this year, and there is no information that we've seen on the field that would make you believe that it would be worth it for the Orioles to re-sign J.J. Hardy. He's I love him. He's been a great player. He's certainly been the captain on this infield. I don't think anybody would deny that, but it would be insane to give him another contract. Or at least it's certainly another big contract unless you're going to bring him back as a part-time player. And that basically means that Manny's going to want to play shortstop. And I don't know that I think Manny will be a good shortstop, maybe above average, but he's not going to be the difference maker at that position that he is at third base. So not so unlike Bryce Harper, who apparently wants to play center field, and I guess the Yankees are, the word is that the Yankees will offer to him, and we'll see what happens. If the Orioles have to move Manny to shortstop and give him that contract and wait for him to hopefully mature, that there are just too many ifs and ifs or what have yous in that scenario that make him a player that I would say you try to move or you let go as opposed to giving him that contract. These are observations and thoughts that have come up over time. So this is.
Well, keep in mind, the guy that owns the team's a bit of a lunatic, so anything that makes sense for baseball, whatever he thinks at the time, literally, I mean, it's going to be run sort of the way our government is run. Well, whatever he thinks at the time, whether it's Chris Davis for 150 or whether he personally feels Machado should be involved or shouldn't. I mean, obviously, it's going to be Angelo's decision to put that sort of a number on anything, as well as it being an Angelo's decision on, July 31st at 3:59 in the afternoon next year, right? That whatever happens with him, I cannot hold even him or his agent or Buck or Dan or anybody else responsible for how this turns out. This is going to be very Angelosian, even though, none of the people that work for him in the media are ever going to implicate him, but this is something that goes directly to his desk, so who knows how it's going to work out.
Well, and even, let's be honest, I mean, he's certainly the guy most likely to be crowned the next franchise player. I mean, he's certainly.
Well, this isn't a franchise that has ever dealt its franchise player to get draft picks in the middle of a season.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it is a franchise that's watched guys like Messina hit the street and they get nothing.
And if this being the quarter point in the season, I mean, the reality is as bad a season as he's having, he's on pace for 40 home runs and just shy of 90 to 100 RBIs. So, I mean, there's value in that, and playing exquisite defense on most occasions, playing Gold Glove caliber defense. So, I mean, there are truths in that as well. So, I'm not saying ride him out on a rail. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about looking with my head as opposed to my heart in terms of what the value will be in what is going to be a $250 million contract at somewhere between 7 to 10 years, which just feels a little insane even for the best players. But for a player that as good as he is, and he's as good as any, you mentioned Bryce Harper. I've said it to you before. I believe that Manny Machado, is more valuable. I don't know if he's better than Bryce Harper. I guess it can be discussed, but he's certainly more valuable. He's been more consistent, and he plays a premium position as much as people will tell you that Mike Trout and Bryce Harper are the most impactful players. Harper's an slightly above average defensive right fielder, and Mike Trout is a good above average defensive center fielder, but he's not a Gold Glover, in my opinion, on a regular basis. And he's Nolan Arenado and Manny Machado at third base are the most valuable players on a regular basis because the numbers they put up and how they play at a premium position on the infield. So I'm certainly not saying ride him out on a rail. I'm just saying let's look at this with less romantic eyes and more realistic about what you're going to get in the long run for a 7 to 10 year contract for a player who is as good as he is. He has flaws, and if you're trying to build your team around someone, you're trying to build a team, and you're trying to build a salary structure for your players, and that kind of money throws everything else out of whack. So what else are you going to be able to put around a player like Manny Machado if that's the choice you make? So that's all I'm saying.
He is Alan McCallum, the Twinkies in town, the Astros. Alan, we got the Yankees again a week from now and the Red Sox again. I mean, feels like we just saw them. We just had the brawls. We just had all, these little trips through the Midwest. They don't last long. And certainly with the Astros, you're seeing the best team in baseball this weekend, an upstart Twins team. This is a rough part of the schedule here, especially after a period of time last week where the Orioles sort of kicked it around for a couple of days.
Yeah, and I've said to you on a lot of occasions that you just watched them against the Kansas City Royals, and they just don't match up well against that club. They haven't in a long time.
You hate those guys, don't you?
Ventura passed away, and he was a significant part of that ire. And Gerard Dyson's no longer with them. There's still sort of a little bit of an arrogance, but a couple of the major issues. And Jeremy Guthrie's no longer there. His words really sort of incited me after having a loyalty to him when he was in Baltimore. So, a lot of the pieces that sort of fueled that arrogance that they had.
There are no tears shed here that they're a sub 500 squad, but certainly, they get the best of the Orioles so far, always. Sort of, they own the Orioles right now.
The Orioles and the Royals are both extremely good defensive teams. So that sort of cancels things out. And the Royals have really good at-bats, and the Orioles don't. They hit line drives, and the Orioles hit fly balls. And when you go to Kansas City and spend a lot of time striking out and try to hit fly balls, you're going to lose, period. And it certainly didn't help that the pitching got knocked around a little bit while that was going on as well. So, it's weird. The Orioles, I know they just lost a stretch of, one-run games, but you look at in several of those games, they had big leads. And it started in Boston. They put up a 9 spot, and Ubaldo almost gave it up. But they on several occasions now, when the Orioles have gone ahead by 6 or 7, the other team has immediately come back and gotten back into the game, only to see the Orioles lose several games. The Friday night in Yankee Stadium, where they were up by, I think it was 11-1 at one point, 11-3 at one point. They put up a 6 spot, I think, on the Royals in Kansas City. There have been a few games where that's happened, and it makes you scratch your head a little bit. But they seem to be in it when the games are close in a different way. I don't know what that means, but it's just an observation. But yeah, look, they're playing clubs, and here's another thing about being a swing for the fences, first ball fastball team. When you see the opposition's pitching less. And you have even less of a plan, you don't to fall back on, they can get the better of you. There's something to be said for staying in and around your division where you know the pitchers, you know what they're trying to do to you, and you can compete a little bit. It does scare me a little bit when they go out against clubs against the Central and the West, particularly with the unbalanced schedule. There was a time when you couldn't afford not to know the other divisions because you played them equally with your own, and that those days have been gone for 12 or 15 years now. So you get used to the competition you see the most, and you can see that in the Orioles. So, these series against the Central and against the West can scare you a little bit sometimes because I do feel like their offense is going to struggle a little more in these situations.
He is Alan McCallum. Are you still, believing? You're a believer at this point? I mean, I think at the quarter pole, they've given us no reason not to believe that this is going to be an interesting summer, that they're going to stay in this thing, right?
Oh, I believe that they're gonna compete within the division. I certainly am a believer that they can win in the regular season and at the least compete for a wild card. I don't have much doubt about that, unless Tillman ends up back on the shelf, or if they can't get any innings out of their starters and the bullpen completely collapses. But I mean, the way the team is constructed, it's constructed to compete in the regular season. I don't believe and haven't believed for a while that this team is designed to win in the postseason. And again, we haven't seen some of the best teams in the other divisions yet. I mean, Houston looks like an absolute monster right now, and the Twins will be an interesting test for the Orioles. I'm curious to see how they'll compete against the Cleveland Indians, teams that you can maybe not so much the Twins, but the Indians and the Astros teams you believe are going to have a chance to go deep into the postseason. So I'm very interested to see what they're going to do against those clubs. But I don't have any reason to doubt them having a chance to compete in the regular season. But this team is designed to compete that way, and the postseason is a completely different story.
All right, man. Well, we'll continue to stay in touch throughout the summer as the Orioles move forward now with the Twinkies in town for a couple, then down to Houston, New York, and Boston next week. We are into the meat of baseball season. No more hockey, no more basketball. For us locally, at least, we'll watch LeBron and Steph and those guys battle it out next week. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's always $10 a month there, and the weather is changing. Good time to get in shape. There's never a better day than today to get started. Go to Planet of Triumphs and get a little inspiration to get you moving. Don't forget Nashville, London, Green Bay. We got our trips on sale, and I'm out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and everywhere the internet is served. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.